Hi everyone. If you are looking for the video to answer all your questions about sending your kids to top schools in London, then this is the video for you. This is part 2 of our conversation with Nicky Sakpoba of Panova Education, where we are talking about the education system and school system here in the UK and how expats can get their children settled into the right schools. What is your overall assessment of kind of the London school system, particularly perhaps the state school side? So would you say, generally speaking, London's got some very good state schools, or, is it really challenging to find those? I think Ofsted is the government agency that kind of tracks and governs schools. So if somebody's coming over with children, primary school or secondary school, should they be concerned? Should they be worried? What would you say, overall speaking?
It can be very challenging with state schools, and again, it depends on area. I would say that if your children are primary age level, between 4 and 11, there is an abundance of very, very good state primary schools. So we always say, no worries there, you will find something that's very good. Once you get to secondary level, there are less of those. It is definitely more challenging to find a school that you're very happy with. And schools are rated, as you say. We have Ofsted as our education authority, and schools are rated generally sort of good or outstanding, or requiring improvement. And we found that it's very easy to sort of look up schools and research and think, yes, I just want to get the ones that are rated outstanding. But of course, the ones that are rated outstanding, everybody else wants those schools too. So therefore, the competition is fierce. Now, the way it works with a lot of schools is it does work on area and what they'll call a catchment area. So the closer you live to the school, the better chance you have of getting a place at that school. But that's not the only criteria. Most schools will have a sibling policy. So if there's an older sibling already in the school, that means that their younger sibling applying will have a better chance of getting into that school. Other criteria would include things like special needs. If your children do have any special educational needs, you automatically would go up the list in terms of priority for places. So there are various criteria that schools look at when they're looking at each application. And if they are oversubscribed and there's a wait list, you would obviously get put on a wait list and move up that wait list depending on which criteria you met. Even in terms of, faith schools as well, you would be more likely, most faith schools will accept children of their own faith and all faiths and none. However, obviously, if they are, for example, a Catholic school, you're more likely to be successful with your application if you can show supporting documentation of your sort of commitment to the church and that sort of thing.
And actually, there's two things I want to point out that, again, might be a little bit different because I work with a lot of American clients, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for state schools, you can have faith-based state schools, correct?
Yeah.
Whereas
Yes.
in America, that would never really happen because there is the separation of church and state. And so if you're sending your child to Catholic school, it's going to be a private school. There's no public school for religious faith-based curriculum. So I think that's a really interesting distinction to make, that you can send your child to a state-based or state-funded faith-based school.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing, again, because I come from the property focus, is you mentioned the catchment area. In some of those really high demand, outstanding state schools, how small can that catchment area be? Or is it even clear? Because what I hear sometimes, it's not always like, these are the boundaries. This is, if you're in here, you're guaranteed, as you've said a little bit already about oversubscribe and things like that. So do you want to speak a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, a school should really be able to define their catchment area. Sometimes there's more than one catchment area. There's a main catchment area, and then there's another boundary outside of that would be their secondary catchment area. Competition is fierce. We do hear, and you hear it regularly, parents who will rent a property within a catchment area because they want a certain school and they want to increase their chances. So does that go on? Yes, it definitely does go on. For those very, very popular schools, absolutely that happens. Parents are savvy and they know how to increase their chances. And if that means renting a property down the road from the school, people will do that for the first year and then move again. So competition is fierce. We've said to parents before that just because you see that a school has an outstanding, it's rated outstanding by Ofsted, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get a place there. I've called schools before for clients, and what I would normally do is if we like the look of a school, if one of your clients is moving into an area and they like the look of a particular school, we would actually call that school and ask whether they had a wait list, whether there were places, first of all. And sometimes, even though the application has to be done through the local authority, you can call a school directly and you can say, look, what are the chances? Do you have any places in year 8? And what are the chances? I've spoken to schools before that have said, we've got a wait list of 40 children for year 8. And in that case, you know that probably there's not a lot of point putting forward an application for that school because it's very unlikely to happen for a very long time. So we would assist clients to find schools that had less of a waiting list. And sometimes schools come up, it's London. People move all the time. People leave schools all the time. And sometimes, luck is there and you get a place that comes up at a very, very good school because somebody just happens to have left and you turn up at the right time. So it is complicated and there isn't one set of rules for every school. Similarly, with independent schools, really, they can set their own application process. It tends to be that for very good independent schools, there is an application process that starts the year before. So you would be applying now, for example, this time of year, October, you would be applying for next September, for entry next September. If they are selective entry schools, they run an entry process, a selection process. Usually there's a test to be sat for the school and sometimes an interview as well. Those tests would normally take place in about November, December time. Interviews maybe January, and then schools would be offering out places sort of February, March, so that they get their lists done for next September. So that's not to say that if you miss that process and you arrive in London that there aren't schools that you can apply to outside of those timelines. You can.
So, Nicky, with everything you've kind of covered, you've given us a great outline of the school system here, some things that parents should be thinking about, the distinctions between the state and the private. What would be some top tips or some things that you come across with the families you're working with who are relocating here that you might advise to get prepared for putting their kids into the best school system or the best schools that match their children?
I would say top tip is always start early. Whether you're looking at the independent sector or whether you're going to apply to state schools, do your research early. Whether you're doing that yourself or whether you're asking for a consultant to help you as early as possible will put you in the best possible place, really. I suppose second tip would be, finding the right area in London, as you would tell your clients, you want an area that ticks all the boxes for a family, lovely properties and lots of activities for children and other families that you can meet and that have, very nice schools in the area. So I think looking at areas that have that lovely mix of everything,
And there are so many great schools. I mean, again, neighborhoods. So I think London is a very friendly, family-friendly city. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. But I think there are areas that spring to mind more than others where you would definitely have that family feel, and you would just be able to meet other families. Lots of parks, outdoor space, lots of family activities you can take the children to, and local schools, where you can, you want to be able to walk to local schools or be very close and meet other families in the area. So I would definitely say just getting that combination right of area and property and school is really key. And I suppose the third tip, and the thing that we always say to parents, is what's really important is that your child is happy. I mean, you can't ask for more than that. If your child is happy at school, they'll do well, they'll be successful. And you're always looking at that. We always call it a pathway, even though you might be looking at a primary school now, actually to have some idea of, where they're going to be going on to, and there's lots of different options that for schooling. So to have some idea of a sort of pathway and what will be right for your children and that will make them happy is really important. So looking at all the criteria and getting the right fit, I would say, making sure it's the right fit for your child. A lot of parents want the sort of London, very elite schools, the very academically demanding schools, which is great if it's right for your child, but it's not right for every child. So it really is the fit, I would say, is the most important thing in your child's happiness.
That's great. Well, thank you. You've shared some incredible nuggets of wisdom. I know one of the observations, I've actually been out with an American couple this week. Their children are older, but one of the things they asked me about, why don't I see any yellow school buses? So in London, we do not have yellow school buses. We don't have school buses. And that kind of speaks to getting that area right, because our children are often, or especially in London, walking. So walking to their schools, right? Or maybe even getting on a tube and transporting themselves to their school. So getting that fit right. And also that speaks to sometimes the independence of your child at different ages, because I see children on the tube as young as 8 or 9 or 10, where they seem to be commuting to school on their own. Maybe they're going only one stop. So getting that right as well is so important. The other thing I will personally say, and I'm not a parent, is that I love that children wear uniforms here. It just takes away so much of the issues in America of children, feeling out of place or feeling less than. And I just love to see the kids in the school uniforms here. They've got the most adorable school uniforms, and I love the little berets and the ties. And
it definitely makes life a lot easier to have a uniform as a parent. So absolutely.
Much easier. And maybe I say it lightly, but I think it does a lot psychologically, that the clothing bit is off the table and kids can just really have an even playing field of being themselves. So Nicky, so much more to cover. Hopefully we'll do another session that speaks more to the boarding school side of things, because again, a lot of my clients might be sending their children for boarding school and then looking for a base here. So we see that connection. You even mentioned day boarders. So we've got a lot to cover in another series. So I'd love to have you back on.
Thank you, Ugo. Thank you. Real pleasure being here. Lots to talk about. We could talk for hours, but tell
everybody how to find you. So I just want to give you a chance, and we'll put your details in the show notes. But I know you're on Instagram, but just give us where can we?
Sure, we're on all social media, but I guess the best way to contact us is through our website, which is panoba.co.uk, panoba.co.uk.
Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check out the other videos on my YouTube channel, where I share great things about the London property market and living in this incredible city. So that's Ugo Arinzeh with Onyx Property Team and Keller Williams. Bye for now.